So I am quite frustrated, a little pissed, as I'm sure you are in the rest of the NFL world. Um, the Sean Taylor tributes
No.
have been a part of a storyline with Washington for like what the last 5 years. They've done various different things, failed at every turn, and they failed yet again. Quick recap for anyone who doesn't know: Sean Taylor was a Pro Bowl All Pro safety for Washington years and years ago in the early 2000s. He was killed on a robbery in his home. Uh, Maybe I think it might have been like '07 or '08 when it happened. I don't remember the exact year, but anyway, years ago, Mark, they invited the family out. You remember this with Jackson Mahomes dancing on the
That
logo.
was just last year.
Or that was last year. Okay, I thought it may have
So
been 2 years ago. But so
they
just last year they did
screwed it
that.
up.
They screwed it up because apparently it wasn't even made a big deal. They were supposed to do a halftime ceremony for it. It ended up being about 15 seconds of recognition of the family and his number there on the sidelines. And then fast forward to yesterday, where they were building this whole thing up about how they were unveiling this statue right in on the concourse or inside the venue, and they do the unveiling, and you could already tell the people who were doing the unveiling were like, all right, we need to get out of here. Like they tore the thing off and just walked away. It's a hollow.
It's
It's
a
not a. You
mannequin.
can't call it a statue. It's hollow. It's a
It's a
mannequin
mannequin.
with not even the full mannequin. It's got the stripes, basically the metal striping.
Wire mesh. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was atrocious. And then someone posted a video or a photo. I think this was from before as well, not yesterday, of the family taking a picture in front of Sean Taylor Drive where they were dedicating the road to him. And the picture was taken in front of a row of porta potties because that's what they had set up behind the street sign. I mean, good God, dude, this is absolute fail left and right.
I never heard about the porta potty one. I mean, yeah, in context for anyone, I mean, Sean Taylor, when he was killed, was one of the best football players in the league. He was building a Hall of Fame level career. He was the last of that, Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu. He was part of that prime generation of like the last of the big hitting safeties when you could still hit the way the 80s and 70s, 80s, and 90s NFL really played the game. A Sean Taylor wouldn't work in today's game. But yeah, I mean, this is well, I think it's even more embarrassing is the fact that if you were going to do this, they did, and they made, if they had made the decision to like, hey, we want to do something different and like cool or unique and make that argument, they didn't even go 100% to that. It's like they did a half-ass C+ job at making the statue. Now, they're saying, hey, it's a statue, but it's not really a statue, but we think you're going to like it. It's going to be cool. I could see them making the argument for that, but then they didn't even fulfill that if that's what their defense is, because it's a Nike jersey. Sean Taylor did not play in the era of Nike having the jerseys.
Right, right.
The helmet is the wrong era, I think, of helmet. And then someone
Well,
else.
yeah, I think they were saying it was a Reebok helmet,
Yeah.
a Nike jersey, and Adidas cleats or something like that.
The cleats are literally soccer cleats. They are not NFL cleats.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah,
That's
someone pointed out they're like they're like you couldn't even go to the vault and be like, hey, we're gonna get some of Sean Taylor's game worn stuff. You couldn't. I'm sure there's a game worn jersey that they could get their hands on. Be like, we're gonna put a mannequin in it, like preserve a game worn jersey with the real grass on it, a blood stain. You could have gone all out and done something cool. Like, hey, we're not doing it's a take on a statue without having a statue.
But just do a statue. Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with that?
No,
like,
I agree. They should have. They should have, but they can't even they can't even make the argument that, hey, we want to do something different. They half-assed their different version of it. It is embarrassing, and again, it's one of those things. Like, as a fan of you're lucky. You're a fan of a franchise that has great ownership, that's historic, that understands how to not be an embarrassment. You know what I mean? They may have not a great team this year, but they're a professional organization. the Chicago Bears are like the dumb family version of the Steelers, right? Historic. They're somewhat a professional, but they run a professional organization. They're not like a clown show, right? They're
Yeah,
just
people
bad.
still want to go work there and
Yeah,
stuff.
they're just bad at producing a good football team. Dan Snyder's Washington, tenure is the worst of the worst. It's a historic franchise that a new owner has completely ruined. And in doing so, not only do you have all this behind the scenes, like sexual misconduct, sexual assaults, horrible workplace environment, but also you can't even get the non the day-to-day stuff that's supposed to be like easy for you to hit home runs, build a statue, honor a great play, fumble, that stuff. It's literally like they're like the Michael Scott version of The Office, only with all the mixed in with Prince Andrew. Like, I don't know what else to say. It's tough. I mean, being a Washington fan has got to be tough, or moments like that, because Sean Taylor. I mean, I love Sean Taylor; he's a great player, but I'm sure there are Washington fans who are like, no, Sean Taylor is like my favorite player ever because of what he did, the way his life tragically ended in the prime of his career. And that is just adding more like insult to injury, being a fan of the franchise. It is brutal, but a good win for the Commanders on the field.
It was a good win for the Commanders on the field, that's for sure. But yeah, just absolute gross negligence from the ownership across the board on this thing, because the lack of there's no excuse at this point either. Kind of to your point, they've had three different. If I'm to believe that the street sign incident was at a different time, which I believe it was, that's three occasions that you've completely fumbled in the public eye. To me, that just clearly shows that a total lack of caring. Like, you don't even care. Like, it's literally a toddler being given a franchise essentially, and just walking around and throwing stuff around. I mean, they've had awful facilities for however long. They had, last year with the stands falling apart.
Oh my God.
I mean, nothing is getting done right in this place. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the concessions have like mold in them or something.
Well, I will add to this. I mean, it just goes to show you again, there are moments that are bad, right? Like, there are moments that franchises have that aren't great. Every franchise has gaffes. I think about my own franchise. Like, the Bears had someone in the Bears organization invited newly signed quarterback, long neck. Why can't I think of his name? Mike Glennon to the draft party at the stadium with like the fans and all this fun. And then they draft Mitchell Trubisky. Like, that's a bad moment, but you could argue, well, those two sides of the organization, like they, you know what I mean? Like it's a bad moment, but you don't know how the draft's going to go, and the football side versus the day-to-day operation side. The Commanders just go to show, like, whoever's running their day-to-day, like, it's not the general manager, the coach, they're in charge of the Sean Taylor, you know what I mean, memorial. It is someone who's the president of day-to-day operations or whatever. Whoever is in those positions that Dan Snyder's hired, they are like inept at their job if they've screwed it up this many times. Like, inept.
It's insane. It's like, I just can't believe it. But yeah, I just needed an event there to start the show here on the Football Lounge as we do our Week 12 recaps, because that just stood out to me as really crazy. It was an interesting week because we were just talking before the show started, Mark, that there weren't a whole lot of like great matchups to really talk about. Next week there's going to be a lot of good ones, and really the rest of the season when you get the nitty gritty of these divisional matchups and things like that. But there were a lot of like interesting storylines that maybe weren't even necessarily game related to come out of this past week. So I'm interested to talk about those. A primary one, we don't need to spend too much time on, but OBJ, very interesting reason to be in the news this week, that he was removed from a flight because they were saying he was refusing to put on a seatbelt. His attorney came back and said, basically clap back to say what happened was he fell asleep at the start before the seatbelts were supposed to be put on. They didn't ask him to put on the seatbelt. They just woke him up and lambasted him for not having a seatbelt on, and then kicked him off the flight, saying that he refused because they wanted to grandstand. Who knows what's actually the truth here in this point? I could see someone trying to big man a big time OBJ because they could. But also at the same time, I could see OBJ just kind of being difficult for no reason. So we don't know what really happened. But interesting way for him to kind of get into the stratosphere of NFL news. Still not on a team either. So yeah, that was interesting, I thought.
Not on a team for long. I do think the Cowboys are ripe to sign OBJ, and I don't think this will hinder his getting signed by the Cowboys. But I believe the airline, I mean, the original reports I read was the airline, it was leaked that he was in and out of consciousness. I mean, let's be honest. He's in Miami. It's Miami. It's not like he was leaving San Antonio, you know what I mean, from a training session or a boring city. It's not like he was just in, Sheboygan, Wisconsin. It's like you're probably there, you're having a good time, you're leaving Miami on your way to LA. And listen, it's one of those things not above the rules, OBJ, not above the rules. And I'm sure it quickly turned into someone realizing maybe a little bit of grandstanding, but it's not a great headline for OBJ. I don't think it will. He may have lost out on one team. Like there might be one team that looks at this and goes, all right, we were looking at OBJ. Maybe we're going to offer him something. And maybe this turned off one general manager or something, but I don't think it hurt the chances of him really joining a team this year. But, I have a hard time believing Odell Beckham Jr. I got to be honest. He's not AB. He's not like a crazy person that way, but it doesn't take much for me to imagine that what the airlines were saying.
Difficult.
Yeah, what the airlines were saying was probably the true story.
Another interesting, very bizarre story to come out of the Cleveland game with the Bucks at Cleveland. Someone apparently stole a truck, a stadium truck, and drove and did donuts on the field before the game. So there were hash marks or donut marks, if you will, tire marks all throughout a portion of the field before the game even started. They had it inspected and said it was okay to play on. But what was going on? It's just the holiday spirit. Everyone getting a little frisky on this Thanksgiving weekend. I don't know.
It was a Ohio State fan who was very upset, and he was just trying to get all of football canceled in the state of Cleveland on that day. I think that,
or perhaps an upset Clemson fan, because let me tell you, out here in South Carolina country, the Gamecocks overthrowing the Tigers, that was pretty intense.
Huge upsets. It was a great college football weekend. I watched every minute of Ohio State, Michigan, and it was a terrific college football weekend. We don't talk a ton of college football on the show. I will say, though, I'm very much looking forward to, I think the top four in the country right now, the reveal should be Georgia, Michigan, TCU, USC. Yeah. And as long as all four of those teams win conference championship week, I think that's your college football playoff right there.
Yeah, I agree with you there. USC has had an accelerated growth that I don't think even we anticipated.
They deserve a shot. They deserve their shot to get blown out by Georgia. They deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think Caleb Williams? Do you think he's the surefire Heisman or what?
I think he's your Heisman. I think he'd be the number one pick in the draft this year. I think he'll be the number one pick in the draft next year for sure. As of right now, projecting it out. He looks like a bigger Kyler Murray. I mean, he looks like a
professional. He looks like a professional.
He really does. I mean, and he moves, the way he moves is Kyler Murray, kind of Patrick Mahomes-esque. He's not Justin Fields. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not, Hurts. But he
might be like Herbert, similar to Herbert.
Well, he's not as big as Herbert. He's like a big Kyler Murray. I think it's really the only way to put it. I don't think he's got like the Josh Allen like rocket arm, but I really do think he's like a thicker, couple inches taller Kyler Murray. It's very fun to watch him play football in that Lincoln Riley system. And I think CJ Stroud's draft stock took a little bit of a hit this weekend. And for Bryce Young, I think it not playing in the biggest games and maybe having a stinker against Georgia or one of those good defenses in the playoffs might actually help his draft stock. Yeah,
that very well could be. All it takes a lot of times is a game or two. I mean, how is his name? Jadeveon Clowney, I was gonna say, was is like the poster child of that. The one hit against Michigan that was played over and over and over again probably bumped him up to that number one draft spot simply because of one play, let alone one game. One play got him there. So yeah, a lot can happen. Spencer Rattler. I mean, the past 2 weeks, really,
No,
he's probably no, he's
you could
most
take a
likely.
flyer on him. I think in the 3rd or 4th round, maybe.
I'm not saying I've never been a Spencer Rattler, fan in terms of NFL
2 years ago,
prospect.
he was like, "Well, you're going to be a
Yeah, but
candidate."
even then I didn't see it, and I still don't see it. But I'm saying the past 2 weeks though is going to get him drafted a lot higher than he should, just based if he were to declare after this year, a win over Tennessee and Clemson and the way he performed in those games is going to do a lot for his draft stock.
I agree. I know we're talking. There's no need for us to talk draft right now. But I will say that the Spencer Rattler type quarterbacks, I think, are also getting even more of a hit from what we're seeing with the Jets and Zach Wilson. Any guy who seems to be a little bit bigger than themselves, kind of like too cool for school type of look, attitude type of thing, I think they're all like Zach Wilson is hurting them even more, because you could have made the argument that Zach Wilson wasn't Johnny Manziel. He wasn't Baker Mayfield, but he still is in that kind of realm of like pretty boy, too cool for school type of guy.
He's in the category for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's going to hurt the Spencer Rattlers and the guy as far as being top draft picks. Now, does it mean you not take a flyer on a guy in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round because he's got a lot of arm talent, and you think especially if you feel like you already have maybe an established starter. But yeah, I absolutely think the Zach Wilson story is another reminder to NFL GMs that it's a lot more like being a quarterback in the NFL is so much about being the guy in the room, and way more than just having an arm talent like Mahomes.
Yes, 100%. Let's get to Thanksgiving games, shall we? Holiday weekend. Good stuff. The game slate wasn't good. It usually is never good, but we were treated to a couple interesting games and some theatrical finishes and whatnot. So we'll start with the Buffalo Bills getting a 3-point win on the road in Detroit. They're in Ford Field. So 2 wins for them in 5 days. This one a 28-25 win. Back-to-back games in Detroit there for the Buffalo Bills. This one really came down to the Lions once again kind of proving what we've thought about them for a while, is that they're a little frisky. They're a little, tough to crack at times. They're 4-7 now. They were 4-6 coming into the game, but it was a tie-breaking 45-yard field goal by Tyler Bass at the end of the game with 2 seconds left. That gives the Bills the win, and so it was a tie game there going into that final stretch, but Josh Allen able to help get the team there and get it done for the Bills. So despite the slim margin of victory, I take it that we're not too concerned about Buffalo, other than maybe what we've been concerned about for, a variety of reasons throughout the season, was that maybe they are a little bit too one-dimensional at times.
The Von Miller injury has me a little concerned.
That's a good point, actually. Forgot to mention that. That's actually a big deal.
I will say, though, I do feel good about Buffalo right now. Get a little win streak going. They have Thursday night football coming on up against the Patriots. I like that matchup for them. If they can close out that game with a win, Buffalo's in a good spot. I mean, listen, Detroit threw everything at them. Detroit's on a 3-game win streak. They are at home. The crowd was very pro-Detroit, as they always are Thanksgiving, especially with the Lions team that's been playing some of the best football they've seen in a couple of years there on this win streak that they've been on. The Lions played really, really well. They were in control of that game for a lot of it. And credit to the Lions, and it's that makes me feel good, because I had the Lions, I think, winning like 8 games in my preseason prediction. I don't think they're going to get to 8, but it definitely feels like this Lions team is really turning the corner, kind of like the Jags. We'll talk about them later on. It's funny because they play each other next week as well. And so the Bills survived it. The Bills have been through a weird week. A week ago, they were getting 6 feet of snow. They couldn't even get out of their homes. They didn't know where they're going to be playing their games. They get to Detroit. They win a game against a good Cleveland roster in Detroit. They stay in Detroit. They take everything that the Lions had to throw at them in a weird trap Thanksgiving Day game, and they handle it. They get out of there with a win. So I feel good if I'm a Buffalo fan. Now you come back and you say, all right, really important in division to get a win against the Patriots. And you got to hope that Kansas City has a slip up at some point in time, run the table so you can host those ever important playoff games in Buffalo. And like I said, for Detroit, positive vibes about the Lions and where the Lions are headed right now. It wouldn't shock me if the Lions are able to upset a good team here down the stretch and pick up another 1 or 2 wins to end the season, maybe as a 6-7 win team for the Lions. I mean, they're starting to feel that way. Dan Campbell's got a good groove going.
Yeah, we're seeing steady progress, even if it's not always translating to wins, and that's really all you can ask for out of Detroit. And yeah, I mean, to your point about the Bills and fending off the Chiefs, I think the 1 seed is going to be so critical for Buffalo this year because look, yeah, no one wants to play in Arrowhead. It's a really tough spot to play. But if you're Buffalo, I mean, that home field advantage in January could be monumental. I mean, the problem for Buffalo is, are those conditions actually conducive to how they play? If they get a really good running team in the snow, can the Bills actually match that? That would be a tough one. But environment-wise, the Bills are really got to be looking to get that 1 seed because ever since they changed the format, the 1 seed is so important now because it's not the top 2 seeds that get that bye and get and get that home game for sure. Down the stretch, it's now the 1 seed and only the 1 seed. So that's going to be big. But Buffalo's, we're going to have to keep an eye on that.
I think you agree with me though. The vibes in Buffalo seem to have turned around. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah.
You lose to the Vikings in overtime after losing to the Jets, and all of a sudden now you come around and you win 2 games really quickly. You're at the Patriots, then you host the Jets, and then you host the Dolphins. So now this 3-game stretch is now really, really important. That you play your division over the next 3 weeks. If you can go 3-0 in that stretch, all of a sudden Buffalo could be looking at again a Super Bowl, like right back up there as maybe the Super Bowl favorite, depending on the health and how they manage through this next 3-game stretch. So big stretch coming up for Buffalo.
The Cowboys at home taking on the Giants. We kind of penciled this one as an important game. Not necessarily one preseason that we thought was going to be that vital, but it ended up being so as the 7-3 Giants came into Dallas taking on the 7-3 Cowboys, and the Cowboys pull out the 8-point win. They get it done whichever way they can. It was a little bit rocky at the start for Dak Prescott and company, but Dak made some really good throws late. CeeDee Lamb did his type of thing in this one, and it was a really close game throughout. I think the Cowboys second half kind of started to put their foot down. They outscored them by 14 in the second half, so a comeback for Dallas in this one. And they get an 8-point win, which against the Giants, the way they've played this year, it isn't anything to sneeze at. I mean, they're a pretty well-coached team. We think Brian Daboll might be in line for Coach of the Year, and it's a good win for Dallas. I mean, they're 8-3 now, Mark, and we know the Eagles probably have the NFC on lockdown, certainly the NFC East, but they're still keeping pace. I mean, just 2 games out right now.
They can put the pressure on the Eagles. I'll start with the Cowboys. Great win for the Cowboys at home because this kind of quells that whole, hey, there is a difference right between us and the Giants. And yeah, maybe there's also then a jump up from you to the Eagles, but at least you're able to say to yourself as a fan of the Cowboys, hey, we are better than the Giants or the Commanders. Yeah, they're playing good football right now. But we are more in the class of should be competing with the Eagles and the Vikings and the Niners, which kind of look right to me right now, the top 4 teams in the NFC. Now, the Cowboys have a great schedule ahead of them to put pressure on the Eagles. They host the Colts, they host the Texans, they're at Jacksonville. They could go 3-0 over the next 3. All of a sudden, you're 11-3 by the time then you're hosting the Eagles on what would be Christmas Eve. So they can put themselves in a really great position especially if the Eagles slip up over the next 3 games, for that to be a mega game on Christmas Eve. And for the Giants, the Giants, listen, Brian Daboll has maximized this team, right? He's gotten he has squeezed that lemon dry. He's got all the juice out of the Giants. And the Giants, what we've seen is when they are coached to their extreme and they play their best games, they are a team that looks like, yeah, they should probably be a playoff team. They look like a team that on any given Sunday, if they're home or if they play their best football in a non-really hostile environment, yeah, they could really, they could maybe upset some teams. Are they going to go to Philly and upset the Eagles in the playoffs? I don't think so. Are they going to go to the Cowboys and upset the Cowboys in the playoffs? Probably not. But the Giants will be one of those teams right now that feels like, can they hold on to dear life? The Giants' schedule gets really tough. So if you're a Giants fan, you're trying to make the playoffs. This is a tough loss because at this point in time, if you were to say, hey, you went 8, and if you told Giants fans before the season you went 8-9, they'd be like, oh my God, yes, we'll take that. Well, if you would have told them at one point in time you would have been 7-2 and then you went 8-9, they'd be really upset about that. So finding a balance. Can the Giants get to 9 or 10 wins? I don't know. They feel like they're running out of juice. It feels like they've squeezed everything out, and it feels like there's enough film now on how Brian Daboll is using Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones can't beat you with his arm, to where it's like it's stalling. Does that make sense? It feels like it's stalling with the Cowboys feels like, whoa, we're getting new layers. Running game really getting going. Dak playing well. A couple bad interceptions. But doing enough to where if they feel like they add an Odell Beckham Jr., the Cowboys all of a sudden, I think, maybe become the 3rd best team in the NFC.
Well, interestingly for the Giants, I mean, I thought when you first said that, like, can they get to 9 wins still? I don't know. And I was like, come on. I mean, they're at 7 wins. But now I look at their schedule, it is going to be tough because they play the Commanders twice. They play the Eagles twice. I'm probably going to just pencil them in for losses against the Eagles. And I'll split with the Commanders, right? So there's 1 win that they can get out of that. And then the rest is Vikings, Colts. So maybe, and I'm thinking they split those games too, so at best, they get to 10 wins. At best, they get to 10 wins. Most likely, I think they get to 9. But it's certainly far from a guarantee,
You're absolutely right. We'll talk about the Commanders coming up, but the Commanders and the Giants, basically, if one of them can sweep the other, they should be in the playoffs. Like, it's coming down to that.
Yes,
if the Giants sweep the Commanders, they're in the playoffs. If the Commanders sweep the Giants, it looks like they're going to be in the playoffs. And the other team will probably just miss out, depending on what Seattle can do in the NFC West.
Right. And that will be an interesting one to look at too, because that was a division where I think I had 2 to 3 teams making it, and it's probably going to be one and a hopeful second trying to squeeze their way in there. The final Thanksgiving game, the Patriots at the Vikings, in this was pretty entertaining game, surprisingly as well. But Mac Jones did a lot through the air. But the Vikings end up pulling out the win with their consistency and just, Justin Jefferson made some incredible plays in this game. And Kirk Cousins put the ball on the money a couple times too. So not to take too much away from him, but a 33-26 win for Minnesota gets them at 9-2. I think we've talked the divisions theirs already. And at this point, it's about, they're 1 game away from getting the 1 seed, which is crazy. Yeah. I think for them, they're going to obviously be looking to get that 1 seed. I think most realistically, just trying to get the 2 seed is probably going to be the most realistic venture for them at this point, unless the Eagles slip, which they could. But right now that was a win that could have been a trap game for Minnesota, honestly. But they end up pulling it out, and Kirk throws 3 touchdowns. And they get it done. So I think Kevin O'Connell after the game was, hey guys, last I checked, this was a 7:15 p.m. start, and your quarterback went 30 of 37 and threw 3 touchdowns. So even Kevin O'Connell is privy to the Kirk Cousins primetime jinx.
Yeah. No, well, Kirk, I have to admit, I have to eat crow on this. I bet the Patriots purely because it was primetime Kirk Cousins. And
Yeah.
there is something with that connection with him and Justin Jefferson. And Justin Jefferson right now is the best receiver in football, especially with Chase injured. Justin Jefferson is so good, and Kirk knows how to get him the ball. And that is honestly a recipe right now for a ton of regular season wins and quite possibly a postseason run. You have to start admitting it with the Vikings. The one thing that the Vikings and the Vikings fans have to, I beg them to be realistic about it, is their two losses are to the Eagles and the Cowboys, the two other good teams in the NFC right now. And in those so in order for them to, get a 1 seed, they have got to get not only a better record, they have to get a better record than the Eagles, because they need to basically have a 2-game swap with the Eagles, and they can't end up with the same record as the Cowboys because the Cowboys will have the rights over them as well. So it's very important for the Vikings to win out, or to, basically win out to give them a chance. I agree with you. The Vikings, if they host through the NFC, that gigantic improvement to their chances to make the Super Bowl, especially with this passing offense. You do not want to be in bad weather in Philadelphia, or you know what I mean? And you don't want to somehow end up in a game in a hostile Dallas environment or a hostile San Francisco environment. I don't think they'll lose that many games over San Francisco, but you never know what can happen. So it's an interesting spot for the Vikings to be in. So I have to eat crow on that. Great win. But I will say this for the Patriots. If I would have told the Patriots fans a week ago, hey, Thanksgiving night, Mac Jones is going to throw for 382 yards. He is going to throw for 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's going to have a quarterback rating of 119.8, and they're going to score 26 points on the road against the Vikings. I think 99.99% of Patriots fans be like, yes, we win that game. Let's go. So the Patriots, I'm sorry, you lost. You gave up 33 points. Where's Bill Belichick, the defensive mind? Matthew Judon's a freak, but this goes to show you this Patriots team has more holes than just Mac Jones. That's the point I was trying to make with bringing that up. It's easy for us to sit here and be like, oh, Mac Jones not good, the Patriots not good. Mac Jones was good in this game. The offense moved the ball and scored points in this game. They let up 33 points on defense. You're not going to win many on the road if you give up 33.
Yeah, I mean, that's supposed to be the staple. Whenever you have a young quarterback, you want to be able to lean on the expertise if you've got a defensive head coach. It's like the situation with Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
It's the situation now with New England, and Bill Belichick's supposed to be the mastermind there. That's the side of the ball we were not concerned about. We were concerned about the fact that you have offensive coordinators who are defensive and special teams dudes. And in this one, Mac Jones looked pretty good. And look, I mean, Damian Harris has been hurt at times this year. That has just let them unleash Ramondre Stevenson. This guy's like a superstar running back. He's really, really good. I think they're starting to find more things they can lean on offensively and start to maybe rely on guys that they should be relying on more often. And that's going to help them win some games. And yeah, I totally agree. If they were told that they would be in this type of game and they would get the performance they got out of their offense, they would take that all day. And I mean, at the end of the day too, in a really stacked division in the AFC East, the Patriots are 6-5. I thought truly, I'll just speak for myself, 6 weeks ago, I was like, this is a way rougher year for New England than I even thought was going to be. And here they are at 6-5. They're perfectly okay right now.
I'll just say this. It's a weird situation to be in, but I always want to put it out there. As of right now, if I'm a Patriots fan, I feel like, okay, Mac Jones is my starter going into next year. But I do think the Patriots should do, and I trust their organization to do this, I think they need to do as much due diligence in the NFL as far as, is there a veteran quarterback who's available? Could you pry away Derek Carr? Could you pry away Aaron Rodgers? Could you pry away Tom Brady? Could Tom
Jimmy G make a
Jimmy
reunion,
Garoppolo?
I
if you are the Patriots, I think all Patriots fans right now would say, if you all of a sudden dropped in Derek Carr, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Garoppolo, a veteran of that ilk in that roster just for a short run in the next, like the last 2 or 3 years of the Belichick, I don't think anyone would have any problems with that. And at that point, I don't think, they could probably trade Mac Jones or keep Mac Jones. I don't think that the Patriots, I think the Patriots are uniquely built to handle a situation like that, because right now they are, as you said, they're perfectly okay. But that seems like a weird place for Patriots fans to be and the Patriots organization to be when you have the greatest coach in football history, whose time is running out, and the roster is not it's missing a couple pieces, as I pointed out. But you add a couple pieces, all of a sudden this Patriots team could be right back in the thick of the wild card team that you do not want to play.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not dreadful. It looks like the line has started to coalesce over the weeks, and they have a pair of good tight ends, and they have finally some decent playmakers on the outside. So you add another piece to that mix, and they're looking a lot different. Let's go to the Sunday games. We'll start with the Jets drubbing of the Bears. Trevor Siemian getting the start for this, even though it was back and forth reporting of Nathan Peterman's in, and then no, they're like, actually, Trevor's fine. He got hurt in pregame warmups, but he's good to go. So yeah, Trevor Siemian comes in, gets a start. They kind of went, toe to toe in the first half there. Mike White on the other end, though, with the Jets looked like an all-pro against your Bears, man. I know it's the secondary, or just I should say the front seven of the Bears that has been relatively decimated, obviously, with those trades and things like that. But the Jets looked like they had an offense come alive, and maybe part of it was just like, oh, Zach Wilson was holding us back. Like Mike White comes in, adds a spark, throws 3 touchdowns. Maybe this is what they need to do offensively. Maybe it wasn't all just like the Bears defense. It was a mixture of the Jets kind of finding lightning in a bottle a little bit here as well. I don't know your thoughts on kind of that
Bears
performance
defense
overall.
Since trading Quinn and Smith has been statistically the worst defense in the NFL. And then going into the game, their 2 starter corner and safety, Brisker and Gordon, the rookies, were out, who've both been playing really well for rookies this year. They're not Sauce Gardner great, but they've been playing really, really well. Like, building blocks for your future defense. So you already had that, and then you lose Eddie Jackson, your starting safety, midway through the second quarter. And in the second half, oh my gosh, the dam broke loose. My little brother texted me midway through the game, is basically like, I'm struggling with Eberflus. He's a defensive guy. This defense sucks. And I do think there are some coaching things that I am struggling with the Bears. And I do think part of it is like, if any NFL team thought, Luke Getsy could maybe be a head coach, go back to this game plan for this game. And I think you like Luke Getsy just kind of exposed himself. He had a Matt Nagy type of day where it was like, I don't have Justin Fields, so I can go back to my system, the Shanahan style of system. And I'll show it with the quarterbacks who are just accurate, dink dunk, methodical down the field. I mean, it just goes to show you that system only works really if you have San Francisco's players or Miami's players. We have not seen it work in the last year and a half in Green Bay. It is not working in Denver. And in Chicago, it has not been good in this tree, the LaFleur, Shanahan tree of that branch of it. It has not been good without Derrick Henry, Miami's players or San Francisco's players. And so it was a bad game plan. I tweeted out, I think I wanted Peterman to start because then the Bears would have ran the ball hopefully 40 times. And I think the Bears ran the ball 40 times, score would not have gotten as out of hand as it was. It would have been a closer game. And they probably would have lost. They're not as good as the Jets. The Jets have way better talent, and the Bears are beat up. They lost Mooney, it looks like, for the rest of the year. Needs ankle surgery. Eddie Jackson, no word yet. But to me, it looked like a torn or partially torn Achilles or a ligament in the ankle or foot, something like that. So he's probably done.
The Garrett Wilson, a lot of people want to talk about him. That play was not a touchdown if Eddie Jackson doesn't.
It's a great pickup. It's a great pickup, but it's not a touchdown. And so, I mean, and there's no Justin Fields. So I was, in a lot of ways, I was rooting for the Bears to lose this game. I would like to see Justin Fields get back on the field and beat the Packers, beat the Lions one more time, and just show like, hey, I know how to win games. We can win games. We know how to put this together, and then probably lose out. And the Bears end up being a 5-win team, get a top 5 draft pick. There's still going to be a ton of flexibility to either trade out or draft a really great player in the top 5. This draft looks very deep, especially in the first half of the draft. So that's, as a Bears fan, what I'm hoping for. Beat the Packers, beat the Lions, or the Vikings, one of the two. You know what I mean? But end up with about 5 wins, get yourself a top 5 pick, and either trade it for another first-round pick and double dip this year, or this year and next year, and then or take the best player available, because you'll need whoever's available, whether it's an edge rusher, a wide receiver, an offensive lineman, whatever it is. But I'd like to see Justin Fields come back. I'd like to see him win, a couple games to just say, hey, this team knows how to win. No Mooney, that's tough. Now, what I will say going on the flip side, let's talk about the Jets, and I'll leave a lot of this to you as well. At this point in time, I said it on my show on Saturday. The news broke that Mike White was going to get the start, and I really struggled with it. But then after watching the game, I think my mind is really clear. At this point in time, I'm done with Zach Wilson if I'm the Jets. Like, you have to, as an organization, you have to say, listen, we will willingly trade you, Zach Wilson. We'll even listen to like teams that you want to consider being traded to, but we're also going to try to get the most for you. And if you're the Jets, you are the most aggressive in the free agent quarterback market next year, because you have a great, great roster that's ready to win. And if you put a Jimmy G, or you can go out and pry a Derek Carr, a Tom Brady, whatever it is, like, you could be in a really great position. You have 2 good receivers, a young running back coming on back, an offensive line. It's really improving, and a great young defense. Or because I don't think they'll be in a great position to draft something. And I think there's a little sour taste in the mouth about the draft, but I think you move on from Zach Wilson. You ride it out with Mike White, see how far he can get you. If he gets injured, maybe you go back to Zach Wilson just to see. Maybe you can put some good tape on and you trade him. But I would be, if I was the Jets, I would look at the Cleveland Brown handbook of last year. Try to handle it better than Cleveland, and don't spend $300 million guaranteed on a serial sex offender, but handle it in that way. Just be like, listen, this didn't work. It didn't work, and it's not working, and we don't want to lose our locker room, because this is a great locker room of win now pieces and future guys. This guy doesn't seem to be our future, and the locker room is out on him. So move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if you had someone whose play was, showing moderate improvements, but he didn't fit the culture of the locker room, you would have a problem on your hands. But they've got both, it seems, the problem on the field and the problem in the locker room. So no, I'm on board with you. I think it's always best in the NFL to move off your misses as early as possible and reset. We saw the Cardinals do it, and while it hasn't translated to much success, we can agree that they're in a much better spot with Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray than they were with Josh Rosen and Steve Wilkes. So I just think that if you're the Jets, you like what you've seen from Robert Saleh, what he's been able to do with that defense in a short amount of time, what they've been able to do with this regime. I don't think that regime is, remotely, they don't have to be tied to Zach Wilson at all. And so, yeah, I would do that in a heartbeat. And then whoever, someone could get a quarterback who is taken number 2 overall with 2 years left on his rookie deal, and have an opportunity there.
Yeah.
So I think there would be suitors for sure. Maybe even a team like Seattle would want to take a flyer or something like that if they feel like Geno's not going to be the guy that they want to roll with next year. That
Come
they
in
want to
with
move
the
on.
competition.
Something like that. I could absolutely see that being
Washington,
so that is
depending on draft where you fall.
Sure.
Or honestly, like a team like the Raiders. If you move on from Carr, maybe you bring in Zach Wilson as if the draft doesn't, it will happen after the draft, in my opinion.
He would be much more of a Raider quarterback than a lot of other teams that he would fit with. Like,
it will happen. It'll happen after the draft. And my whole thing at this point is, unless Mike White they did it well in the sense that they said he was inactive and this is a punishment type benching, right? They basically said, we need to punish him for his really bad decisions on the field and at the microphone. So we are benching you and you're inactive. You're not even dressing. So that way they can, if they go back to him, say, listen, we knew we were going to go back to him. That was a punishment benching. So they gave themselves a little wiggle room. But at this point in time, it seems like the Jets fans don't care. It's not like, and the GM, normally GMs get fired for botching a pick like that, but he's nailed everything else. I mean, the defense he's built, the young weapons, it just seems like as far as an organization goes, they need just an adult in the room. I mean, Saleh basically said it best in the press conference. He said Mike White makes the easy look easy. Zach Wilson doesn't make the easy look easy. Mitch, and that was Mitch's biggest fault. Mitch had wow plays and would scramble, do all this stuff, but Mitch never made the easy look easy. And like, that's when I get so excited about Justin Fields, when he just does the dump offs and stuff. It's like, oh, he makes the easy look easy. Hey, it's 3rd and 3, nothing's open, just run. Yeah, okay, make the easy look easy. And that's what you want from your young quarterback, because then if the ceiling's still really high, which we all know that Zach Wilson's ceiling is high, but if you can't make the easy look easy and the game doesn't start to slow down, then you just move on. And the Jets, I feel like that's what they should do at this point. Ride it out with Mike White and see what you can do in the offseason as far as getting rid of Zach Wilson and be aggressive in the free agent market. Like, we got a ready-to-win team now. Which adult quarterback wants to come in and try to win a bunch of games and compete in this tough AFC East?
Yeah, who's along for the ride? We'll find out. Overtime game, we got the Brownies over the Buccaneers 23-17 in overtime. Todd Bowles kind of getting some heat here.
He's a mess.
His press conference was bizarre. I mean, late fourth quarter, they have an opportunity.
It was bizarre.
Yeah, they have an opportunity there to like preserve some time and get Tom Brady an opportunity to do what he's done 1,000 times in his career.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Instead, Todd Bowles says they didn't use any other timeouts, so they let the clock basically drain down, and then they end up going into overtime. He said they did that because, what if Tom throws a pick? What a bizarre statement. Like, first off, I don't care who your quarterback is. That's never, you're living in your fears. You're admitting to living in your fears then at that point.
Yeah.
And also, Tom doesn't throw picks in tie games. Warren Sharp put out, it's been over 15 years since Tom Brady threw an interception in a tie game in the fourth quarter or overtime. So, like, what are you talking about, dude? That was bizarre. Goes to OT, and the Browns go down. Nick Chubb seals the win. Good win for Cleveland. The Buccaneers, that's a brutal loss. That sucks. They're lucky to be in the division they're in, because if they were in any other division, that could be that could be the difference between the playoffs or not the playoffs for them. One win that clearly they should have had, and instead they let the Browns stick around. And this is also equally on the Buccaneers defense to me, just kind of like they only let up a total of 23 points in 5 quarters, but gosh, like at the times when you needed them to pull through and get that one key, stop or whatever, it didn't seem to come. But yeah, I just terrible management, and it was bad.
To me, it's a little bit of Brady. I mean, the last time the Bucs
didn't play great either. Yeah,
the last time the Bucs scored over 22 points in a game was that week. Gosh, that was October 2nd. Their loss against the Chiefs. I mean, you're talking about over a month and a half of action. I mean, they've just not offensively been clicking either. This was after the bye. I thought they'd come out and play really well. Todd Bowles is not an NFL coach. I'm sorry. He's had his chances. And at this point in time, I would argue Todd Bowles is one of the elite coordinators in the game, like a Leslie Frazier, elite coordinator in the game. And you just shouldn't be a head coach. It's just not for him. He doesn't handle the press conference as well. It doesn't seem like the team has an identity right now. And honestly, if you're Brady at this point in time, you're just saying to yourself, okay, can I get to 9 wins? 9 wins will win me the division. Can you find 4 more wins on your schedule? The Saints game is huge this weekend, because then after the Saints, they have at the Niners, hosting the Bengals. Those are probably 2 losses. And then they do end the season at Cardinals, hosting Panthers, at Falcons. So they could go on a 3-game win streak to end the season, so that winning one of the Saints, Niners, Bengals games is all important. And even then, winning one of those games means you have to go on a 3-game win streak to end the season, just to get to 9 games, be above 500, and feel slightly, like you have some groove going into the playoffs. If Brady's in the playoffs, do I bet against him? I don't know. It's going to be tough, depending on the matchups and where they play. They'll be a division winner. They'll get a home game. But right now, at this point in time, the Bucs have got to find a way to just start scoring 24. Listen, if they had scored 20 points in this game in regular time, they would have won the game. They in their last previous wins, 21-16 over the Seahawks, 16-13 over the Rams. Like, their defense is doing enough. Like, they only gave up 21 points in that weird loss to the Panthers, and they only scored 3. So, like, the Bucs offense to me is the problem. They've got to run the ball more efficiently. They've got to find a way to, Mike Evans leads the league in like catches that just miss his hands. It doesn't look like Brady's like bad. Like, even Rodgers with the broken thumb, like, he looked off, and we'll talk about that game. It doesn't look like Brady looks off. It's not working right now. And I think a lot of it is Todd Bowles. I just think he doesn't trust Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles doesn't seem to have a grasp on what needs to happen in an NFL game to manage it well. And the Bucs are in some, luckily in the NFC South, but otherwise in some real trouble.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow for Tom Brady, I'm sure, in this situation, coming back this year, looking to kind of have a rebound from the year before. And it's been tough sledding so far. I totally agree with you. The offense has been the biggest issue for this team, especially in the last 6 weeks, as you laid out. I just think that the defense has, when you needed them to make a play, they weren't able to. It's kind of like how I felt about the Steelers defense a lot of times this year. They've been really, really good. But then if, on a key, drive, they end up giving up a score. The Bengals beat the Titans, edge them out by 4 points, the rematch of the divisional game last year. And it was a big game. And even though it was very low scoring, 20-16, the final for Cincinnati, both teams were scratching and clawing. I mean, this was a real, like, heavyweight matchup.
It looked like a playoff game.
It did. It really did. It had that atmosphere feel to it. And this was in Nashville. And, Joe Burrow and T. Higgins in Cincinnati just pulled it out in the end. And that's where I think you see guys like Joe Burrow, where, like, he didn't light up the stat sheet at all, but he just made some, like, really key plays. T. Higgins is dynamite. I think we're seeing now that he's not just a number 2 to Jamar Chase. Like, they have 2 number 1 wide receivers on that team. Yeah. And the Titans, they're so physical. I was surprised how much they were able to kind of box in that offense for as long as they did. But what the Bengals did, and what you need to do against the Titans, is shut down Derrick Henry. And that's what Cincinnati did for the majority of this game. Derrick Henry had the one big play on the receiving, on the reception that he took down to, like, the goal line. Other than that, the Bengals really kept Derrick Henry in check. They forced Ryan Tannehill to throw 34 passes. And that's going to be the recipe for success, giving up just 2 field goals in the entire second half. Yeah,
there's 2 things that, listen, if you watch this game, you left the game saying Burrow made the plays he needed to make. He wasn't terrific. He wasn't Patrick Mahomes, 5 touchdowns, 400 yards. But again, you watch the game, you're like, this dude has it. He's got the it that he makes the plays that he needs to make when he needs to make them. And he was only sacked 1 time. Remember, in this playoff game last year, he was sacked 9 times and found a way to win that game. That's huge for Cincinnati, because even down the stretch last year when Cincinnati was reeling off wins, he was getting sacked a ton. So if they can protect him now down the stretch, they have a brutal stretch. The only teams they play below 500 in the remainder of the stretch are the Browns, who will have Deshaun Watson at this point, and the Bucs, and it's in Tampa, and they have Tom Brady. So a brutal stretch for the Cincinnati Bengals, but I believe in the Bengals. I think the Bengals right now will win the AFC North. I think they're in the driver's seat just because of Joe Burrow. They're going to get Chase back. I have all the confidence in Burrow. That defense, as you mentioned, second half, this is what the Titans did in the second half. Punt, 3 plays minus 6 yards, punt, 6 plays, 19 yards, punt, field goal, and that was it. So this Bengals defense is really great in the second half. They make adjustments. They wear you down. They can stop the run. And the Bengals offensive line is protecting Joe Burrow. He's getting his number one guy right back here just in time for the stretch run. A lot of arrows pointing up for the Bengals. And for the Titans, listen, the Titans, I think Big Cat on part of my take this morning said it best. The Titans are exactly the team that I think he said, if you're a Titans fan, you have this going for you. If you're going to probably win your division, so you're going to host a playoff game, and then if you win that game against a team like a Jets or another team that that just barely doesn't win their division, you can win an ugly game if you're the Titans. Like, you can just run the ball, physical defense, beat someone up, keep it low scoring, win 23-20, and then you can absolutely, in a snow game or in a bad weather game in Kansas City, go in there and be physical and give yourself a chance, right? That's what the Titans need. They need breaks like that to be in the Super Bowl. Will they get all them? Probably not. But as of right now, that's how the Titans are built. And until they make some sort of gigantic culture change, that's how they're going to try to win playoff games. And right now, they're at least doing everything they need to do, be in a position to be in those games, and credit to the Titans.
Yeah. The Dolphins win by 15 at home over the Texans. And this one really was a, display really of all around talent that the Miami team has that Houston team does not. But Miami scored 30 in the first half and then was held scoreless in the second half. So it was kind of a tale of two halves in that respect. But I did like what's kind of come out from the press conferences, talking about Mike McDaniel, how he had to reset Tua Tagovailoa's confidence. He felt that Tua had been just so battered down mentally in his first couple years in the league that the reports are saying he cut up a 700 play video of everything that Tua does well, showed it to Tua, tried to give him some confidence and understanding of what his skill set is. And Tua basically said that has helped a tremendous amount for his confidence as well. So it does go to show that we're not just seeing like a schematics influence from Mike McDaniel. We're seeing on the personal level him kind of influencing the culture there and the players. Texans are not, a double-digit win is a double-digit win anyway you slice it. Miami's 8-3 now and in the driver's seat in the AFC East. Really just it's them and the Bills now fighting for who's going to run away with that division.
Yeah, they control their own destiny to win the AFC East, which is, you got to feel good if you're Miami. Same with the Bills. They both, they have a game against each other still. I'll say this. We didn't talk about it last week because the Dolphins were on a bye, but like 2 weeks ago, and I tweeted it out, there was a video that went viral of Brian Flores' like 2 or 3 interactions with Tua versus Mike McDaniel 2 or 3 interactions with Tua. And it speaks to exactly what you say. And it's just different. And I know it's hard if you're 40 or older. It's hard for you to see the NFL different. Like Brian Flores was a really good head coach, right? He commanded the room, great at the podium press conferences, like a man's man. You're like, that's a guy I want leading my football team.
Authority. Yeah.
And now you look at Mike McDaniel and say to yourself, wait a minute. He's about to get a lot of other guys hired, because what you see in that video, and if you can go back on my Twitter at Mark Hessman, find it, dig it up, or just search Mike McDaniels with Tua versus Flores with Tua. Flores would just go up to him, fist bump, like, hey man, you got this, believe in you, let's go. And then Mike McDaniels grabs him, and they're in the middle of the game, joking about fast food, play calling, it's relaxed. He keeps to, and think to yourself, if you're a young quarterback and you are the weight of the world, $1 billion franchise, you're a high draft pick, and you have your coach being like, come on, man, let's go. Believe in you, believe, versus your coach like making you just feel like, hey, I'm your butt. Like, we're good. Like, we're good here. Like, we are just friends. Like, we're that relationship. And now maybe some quarterbacks react different. Maybe they want that authoritarian like pressure. But
yeah, like Tom Brady is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Like he wanted a
but
hard
again,
access
Tom
structure.
Brady's Gen X versus Gen, millennials, and now these kids are Gen Zers. I mean, these kids get drafted.
Yeah.
So it's a different relationship, and I do think Mike McDaniel. I don't know if it can last with Mike McDaniel. I'm sick of predicting now he's going to be great for forever. I thought 1 year Matt Nagy nailed it. I thought he was great as a rookie coach, and he was. If you look back, the culture, the play calling, everything. And can it last? Can you adjust when they make adjustments to you? Matt Nagy couldn't. So I'm not sitting here to predict can McDaniel, can Dable, can they adjust? Well, we'll have to wait and see at this point in time. So that being said, I think Miami is very, very good, and I think Miami very well could upset some people in the playoffs. I mean,
they can win in a lot of ways,
But if Miami's playing in an AFC Championship game, I would not be shocked at this point in time. I will say this now about the Texans really quickly. The Texans finally have made it clear. Davis Mills is not the future. Davis Mills will now have a long career as a backup in the NFL. Good for him. He's going to make a lot of money. Lovie Smith will probably be fired, and they will be able to say, okay, we have no more Jack Easterby. That whole regime is done. We can now start fresh with a new head coach, a new quarterback, and a bunch of draft capital. So the Texans, the stock is everything's going in the right direction. Get the number 1 overall pick between Stroud and Young. Find the coach that believes in them, who's young, who can build around them, and good luck. And you're at least doing the blueprint now that the rest of the NFL is following that seems to be semi-working in areas of the NFL. And the AFC South, it doesn't seem too hard to be competitive in the AFC South right now. So maybe the Texans could turn it around pretty quickly. They're at least on the track to doing that. And so you got to feel good about that if you're a Texans fan.
Yeah, they'll get the number 1 overall pick, barring some miraculous comeback with Kyle Allen and company down the stretch here. The Washington at home gets a 19-13 win over the Falcons. Falcons have an opportunity late, but Kendall Fuller's interception in the end zone kind of just puts that one out of reach and seals the win for Washington. Nothing spectacular from either side. It was a close game. Both two teams that are kind of feisty win ugly. And so, of course, you could assume that this game would come down to a 19-13 win with some sort of, crazy interception at the end of it. So not much to say other than, the Commanders are commanding.
Yeah. I mean, besides there being a joke of a franchise, which we started the beginning off, their play on the field right now is going well. I mean, the momentum is riding with the Commanders. And for the Falcons, they seem a little rudderless, a little meandering. And at this point in time, if you're the Falcons, I don't know if they are trying to get a quarterback, if they're just trying to build the franchise. I mean, they traded Ridley. That was an under the radar move because he's been suspended, but he's a legit number 1 receiver in the NFL. No Kyle Pitts the remainder of the year. It wouldn't shock me now if the Falcons go into full tank mode, try to kind of commit to getting a top 5 pick to at least have flexibility. You know what I mean? To trade it for a quarterback or to get a quarterback up high, whatever they're doing. So they're a little meandering. I just praised the Texans. They're doing it the right way. The Falcons are doing it in a weird way, or kind of meandering through it. And for the Commanders, absolutely, we talked about it earlier. Between them and the Giants, they both could make the playoffs if they kind of split down the stretch, but one of them could really kind of kick the other one in the teeth. And my money's on the Commanders right now. I like the play of Heineke. The team's rallying around him. The defense is finding their teeth. Chase Young back. So good vibes for the Commanders on the field, just not the Commanders as an organization.
Yeah, not off of it at all. Carolina gets a rare win at home over the Broncos. God, Denver's just the absolute disaster. I mean, we say it every week. But Sam Darnold getting his first start since January, and today Steve Wilkes just named that Darnold will be their starter after the bye. So that's three different starting quarterbacks for Carolina, and three different quarterbacks of which they've said we're sticking with this person. um, and so it's very interesting. PJ Walker still hurt; he's coming back from injury, but even if he's healthy, they're going to stick with Darnold. Very interesting. Meanwhile, it was just, I mean, the Broncos held the 10 points yet again. They are 32nd out of 32 teams in scoring offense this year, under 15 points per game. And that's even almost putting it, putting like some roses on it, because they've had a couple games so of 20-point games that might skew those numbers. They've had a lot more 10 or fewer. So it's just, man, a season lost. I guess they're going to stick with Nathaniel Hackett throughout the rest of the year, but I mean, it's a surefire firing at the end of the year, right? I mean, there's no. Do you even see? I honestly can't see a situation where they bring him back.
No, I would get rid of him sooner rather than later too, because now you got the defenders yelling at Russell Wilson. It's getting to the point where it's bad. I would axe him within the next week or two if I was in charge of the Broncos. And I would just say, listen, this did not work. It's not working, and this season's a disaster. We have to do something. I don't think they're going to look to trade Russell Wilson. They got to give Russell Wilson another year. Like, that's a huge investment they made in him and being the franchise quarterback. So he gets another year. Hackett doesn't. It's not a desirable coaching job. So I don't know who's going to take the job or who they're going to find to take the job. But I'm sure there'll be candidates. I just want to read the list of people who have more touchdown passes than Russell Wilson this year. That list includes Daniel Jones, Carson Wentz, Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan.
And Carson Wentz hasn't played for over a month.
Davis Mills, Jacoby Brissett. My guy Justin Fields has a lot more touchdown passes. Andy Dalton, Marcus Mariota, all have more touchdown passes than Russell Wilson. He is just one ahead of Baker Mayfield.
I was gonna say Baker.
Yeah, he barely ahead of Baker Mayfield. I mean, so
Kenny Pickett, he's probably still light years ahead of Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. My thing with, how I feel about the Broncos. I don't spend too much time. I called this as a win for the Panthers, by the way, on my Saturday show. I feel so good about that. My bold prediction to start the year was the Panthers would have 3 starting quarterbacks. Now I predicted it'd be Corral. I mean,
right. Oh, that's a good. Yeah, I forgot about that. That's
so
true.
I'm technically wrong, but I'll take this as a win. And then listen, I think it's smart to ride with Darnold for 2 reasons. Because Darnold is the best option you have as your bridge guy. He is the most, I bet, like, best in the locker room. It feels like guys like Darnold. And it feels like if you're going to bring in a rookie quarterback, Darnold's a good guy to kind of learn from, in the sense of like, shit, man, I've been through it. I've been through it all. And I can kind of give you some do's and don'ts. Also, Darnold has a little bit of trade value. I think they have him for another year. On the contract.
Yeah, they have him for next year, but they could get out of that contract very easily.
But he has a little bit of trade value. I mean, Baker's done. Baker should be in a booth. I mean, if I'm Baker Mayfield, I would go. You could get an ESPN job at College Game Day like tomorrow if you wanted to, or Fox, like the big noon kickoff.
Yeah, he'd be really good.
I think he would, and just start that career if you're Baker. And, PJ's a fun guy to keep in your organization as a third or a future backup, whoever you want him to be. So I think it makes sense with Darnold, because you can use Darnold in some sort of way to maybe get a 6th-round pick as a trade value, just to, someone wants to, if he has a nice way to end the season, as someone wanting some depth on the roster, or you keep him to maybe be your bridge quarterback for a starter next year, whatever it may be. So, yeah, the Panthers, it's nice to win a game. Like, I want my Bears to win a couple games here down the stretch. It's bad for the Panthers because the Panthers really need one of the two. They need Stroud or Young. I think the Falcons need Stroud or Young. The Texans need Stroud or Young. So one of those teams is not going to end up in the 1 or 2 spot. The Bears right now are projected to be the number 2 overall pick if they lose out. So the Bears could be asking for a huge haul payday.
They could get a massive haul.
And that would be terrific. So there's a lot. There's this top of the draft board now. We're in week 13. So we can start really projecting that out. That's going to be fun to start talking about coming on up, because there are two quarterbacks who are, you could feel like go 1-2, and there's kind of no questions asked, Stroud and Young. Take your preference. And so if you're a team that has your quarterback and you end up in that spot, you could get a real pretty penny for being in that spot. And if you're the Panthers, if you're, the Texans, if you're the Falcons, you don't want to pay that pretty penny. So start losing the rest of the way.
On to a team that certainly doesn't need a franchise quarterback, because they already got one, and I hope that this performance kind of put that to rest. The Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence
great win for
come
them.
up with an awesome fourth quarter drive to come back, win the game on a 2-point conversion as well. Trevor Lawrence looked amazing on that final drive, and he hits Marvin Jones with the touchdown. Great catch by Marvin Jones as well on this one, but that made it 27-26 Baltimore. They decided to go for two. Doug Peterson with nothing to lose type of mentality. Let's go for this and stick it to them. They do. And, to me, really, I mean, Baltimore didn't look great in this game at any point. I was much more, encouraged by the performance by Jacksonville, win or loss. They just played a lot better, I think, overall. But Baltimore's defense has been Swiss cheese this year. I mean, it's bad. It went coming into the year thinking that, I think they're going to be pretty good, actually. And then they got Kyle Hamilton, and you're like, okay, they got some additions there. Patrick Queen in his second year are going to, make some steps. Yeah, and they have just really looked bad. And so that's going to be a big problem for Baltimore, because right now it's them and Cincinnati for the AFC North division. Probably going to end up going to Cincinnati when it's all said and done. But Baltimore, I mean, you're going to have trouble envisioning them winning a playoff game if their defense is this poor, giving up 18 fourth quarter points. So, yeah, that's just something to keep an eye on, but really encouraged by Jacksonville.
You said it. I mean, they were up 19-10, and they gave up a 14-play, 75-yard touchdown drive to the Jags. Then they gave up a 4-play, 5-yard field goal after the 1-play fumble. Then they gave up a 10-play, 75-yard touchdown drive, and then the with the 2-point conversion, and then the Baltimore misses the field goal. I don't blame Lamar.
Which, by the way, Justin Tucker, man, God, he almost made that.
I know,
67-yarder, unreal.
It really is terrific. I don't blame Lamar Jackson for this loss at all. I mean, the fumble's bad, but your defense should be able to handle situations like that. Your offense did score another touchdown after that, and you couldn't seal the deal. The Baltimore's got some real problems. Can they get it right between now and the playoffs? I don't know, because, I mean, it seems like they're just schematically, things are just broken as far as blowing huge leads. It's not the first time they've blown huge leads this season. So I'm concerned about Baltimore in that regard. And for Jacksonville, this is a signature win. I mean, this is like, all right, program right direction, just kind of like I talked about with the Jags, with the Lions earlier. And I love that the Jags and Lions play each other next week. That'll be a fun matchup to watch. But both teams feel like they're headed in the right direction. And Baltimore feels like defensively, I do not trust them at all right now, especially and when they're coming down to the division between them and the Bengals. Bengals defense looks great, and they're getting healthy at the right time. The Baltimore offense is, if it's not Andrews, it's like he has no one to throw to, and their defense is, as you mentioned, Swiss cheese. So concerns in Baltimore.
And, they did a lot of that without Travis Etienne, who went down with an injury early in the game.
Yeah, that sucks.
He's going to be fine, they said. So nothing overly concerning there. But, yeah, that's going to have to get ironed out if they want to make some sort of postseason run. Speaking of 2-point conversions, the Chargers get a win on a 2-point conversion from Justin Herbert, who looked great, leading the team to a fourth quarter heroics as well. And the Cardinals dropping one yet again. So that's a heartbreaking loss for Arizona.
They're dead.
That they really needed a win to kind of like help rewrite the narrative of like how their season's been going. And they almost did. They almost did get the win, but 25-24 win for the Chargers. And, I think these types of performances, even if the Chargers, don't get as far as they wanted to, or, maybe even if they miss out on the playoffs, these are the types of things that'll come back and potentially give Brandon Staley another year at the helm.
Yeah, he's in. Listen, the Los Angeles Chargers leading rusher for 38 yards was Justin Herbert. I've said this for a while now. I love Austin Eckler. I mean, my God, you need this Chargers offense needs a running game. They are the Bills. I mean, they need a running game. 13 carries.
I don't think it's that bad.
13 carries, 65 yards. Justin Herbert had to throw the ball 47 times. I mean, and he was great. And he was great down the stretch. Kyler Murray, if you're a Cardinals fan, this is similar to the Broncos in the sense that you have to stick with Kyler because you're financially gigantically invested in Kyler. The only way you move off of Kyler is if you as an organization feel like the locker room and everything is going anti-Kyler but pro-Cliff. I don't know where the locker room's at. The move right now for the Cardinals feels like fire the coach, start fresh. But I think there is a case to be made if you're the Cardinals as well in saying, I think we made a huge mistake paying Kyler Murray the money we paid him. And Kyler Murray in the trade market, there are teams that would be willing to find a way. You're not going to tell me that a team like the Jets, a team like the Commanders, there are some other teams out there, if they don't get the number one pick, team like, an Atlanta and a Carolina. Tampa, depending on what happens with Tom Brady. They all would, absolutely. Kyler Murray could be available. I don't know. I think you have to stick with it, similar to the Broncos. It's a quarterback league. But, Kyler Murray is not worth the money. And he is proving, this was a huge year for Kyler to show, like, I'm that dude. We all made fun of him in the offseason with the contract, basically saying, you please study. And he looked terrible. 18 of 29, 191 yards, 2 touchdowns, interception, a quarterback rating below 90. It's just like, yikes, it's bad. And you're 4-8, 4-9, or whatever they are, 4-8.
Yeah, 4-8. Yep. 1-6 at home.
Yeah, he's not good, and they owe him a lot of money.
They do. That's going to be like one of the key things to focus on going into next offseason.
Let's be honest. It's the second year in a row that they've had to go to Colt McCoy for multiple games. So it's not even, you can say that, well, at least he starts every game. You now have to build into Kyler Murray, and you're paying him going to be close to $50 million a year. You have to build in the fact that he's only going to play 15, 14 of your games.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, you can't really have that when you're paying all that money, for sure. Another overtime game, the Raiders win 40-34 at Seattle. Huge win for Vegas. But, you could blame this on Seahawks defense for just opening up, right up the middle and letting Josh Jacobs run 86 yards in overtime on a long touchdown run. But Josh Jacobs, with a long storied history that the Raiders have had, the most scrimmage yards by a Raider player ever in the history of the Raiders organization. Over 300 yards, all-purpose yards, 229 yards rushing, and over 70 receiving. Quite the game for him. And, Derek Carr didn't play great. He had a couple picks in this one. It was a rocky start for them as well. But, comes back 25-36, gets a few touchdowns there and kind of rights the wrongs. And, Seattle kind of stops them on their track of what they were building. Seattle's still fine. They're 6-5, but it was a good win for the Raiders. Even though they're at 4-7, they're probably not going anywhere. Not going to go to the playoffs. I doubt it. But a statement win, and they score 40 points. Like, you got to be pleased overall with that. And if you're Seattle, I'm not panicking either, because it's one of those games where you were in it to the end. You go to overtime and you lost. There's a lot to be encouraged about still for the Seahawks, given what they've done this year.
2-0 since Derek Carr cried. That's huge for the Raiders. And I'm dead serious. You're right.
I know that's
But remember 2 weeks ago, we were literally like, what are the Raiders going to do? They can't fire their coach. They can't afford to fire their coach. McDaniels is terrible. And now there's a little bit of like, okay, let's breathe. Let's take a breath. We may not be in the worst shape after all. Like maybe these things are kind of figuring themselves out. They didn't pick up the 5th-year option on Josh Jacobs. I don't know what they're going to do with him. The free agent running back class this year includes David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley. I mean, there's a lot of big names. There's going to be some good running backs looking to get some money in the open market this offseason. For Seattle, I feel similarly to I feel about the Giants. This is a good team, but I do feel also like the juice has really been squeezed. And we are seeing kind of the upper limits of how much more can this team take? Where can they get to? And, for Seattle at this point in time, can they get to 9 wins? Can they be the team that squeaks in the playoffs and steals one of the spots from those NFC East teams? Possibly, but it's going to take a lot more, just kind of grit, run the football, play some defense. You can't give up 40 points. If you're Seattle, you can't win games like that. Geno's played well, but you can't win giving up 40 points. So it's going to rely more on the defense. There still is a great surprise this year, and they're headed in the right direction. I don't know what Seattle looks like in 2 years from now, but right now, if you're a Seahawks fan, you're kind of enjoying it still, I think. And that's a tough loss. But if you're a Raiders fan, you do feel, I think, a little bit of a weight lifted. Okay. The season and our franchise was on the brink of disaster, and we found a way to win 2 overtime games. Whew, okay. Everything's not lost. Maybe this coach can put it together. For the Raiders, it's all about going on a win streak here to kind of wrap up the season, kind of good vibes, find a way to get to, 6-7 wins, feel better about yourself going into next year.
Yeah, and still some confidence in the direction that they're headed with Josh McDaniels. The Chiefs get a 26-10 win at home over the Rams, led by Bryce Perkins. Not much really to say about this one. It looks like the Chiefs maybe are even getting more dangerous now with a running game led by Isaiah Pacheco, the rookie. I'm interested to see kind of how many more opportunities he gets down the stretch, because he's really talented, and he's kind of given them a new dimension of something that they haven't had for a couple of years, like the ability to actually go up the middle and pound the rock when they need to. Travis Kelce is still incredible. I mean, the guys, there's not much more you could say about that. And Mahomes only throws 1 touchdown, but it's really all they needed. They controlled the game from start to finish. So yeah, not much to say on that. They're 9-2. They are in the driver's seat for that 1 seed, and they are still, and have been all year long, my favorites to win the Super Bowl, and nothing has made me waver on that in recent weeks. So
yeah, Sean McVay is in concussion protocol, and thoughts thoughts are with him. They replayed that way too many times through the game, but it was a bad game. So
you guys got to go check that out on Twitter if you haven't seen it. It's really funny. He ran
that nailed one of his players. That player deserves a fine. I mean, he had an in-team fine, because it's like one of those things where it's just like, what are you doing, man? You gotta be paying attention.
Head on a swivel.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Chiefs are a juggernaut. The Chiefs are terrific. The Chiefs, if Pacheco adds this kind of element to just downhill north-south running to help them out, this is the time to establish it. I mean, Bill Belichick said it best. Football season doesn't start till after Thanksgiving. We're in after Thanksgiving, and the Chiefs came out and just took care of business at home. Easy win. Patrick Mahomes is the MVP of the league. He's the best player in the league. It wasn't a terrific day by him. It wasn't, it was a down day by his standards, but they didn't need him to do much. They were able to run the ball. 22 to give the rookie 22 carries. That's huge. I mean, that takes such a load off Patrick Mahomes. I'm sure he woke up feeling better this morning than he's felt in a couple of weeks. And that's huge mentally too for Chiefs team, just to feel like, hey, we can hand the ball off if we need to in a game 20 plus times to a back and be able to grind out a win. So good for them. For the Rams, again, rudderless. They just need a reset. They need to just write off the rest of the year and give one more real run with this core next year. That's all the Rams are doing at this point in time. And if I were them, it's hard to shut down a guy like Aaron Donald, but I would be limiting Aaron Donald as much as I can, and Jalen Ramsey, because the last thing you want is kind of what the Bears are dealing with now is like, two of our really good players who we can't wait for next year to be corner pieces, Mooney and Jackson might have to have surgeries now. You don't want that to happen for the Rams.
Yeah. Their window is, short. So I agree with you there.
Next year, and that's it.
The 49ers shut out the Saints at home 13-0. 49ers can win in a lot of ways, and this kind of proved it yet again. I mean, they'll go toe-to-toe with you. It wasn't a flashy performance across the board in any which way. We'll see if Deebo Samuel's able to stay healthy and things like that. I think he got banged up again in this one. So did CMC and Elijah Mitchell. So they're not necessarily getting healthy at the right time, kind of going the opposite way there. But yet again, they're able to get a win here, and their defense able to shut down the Saints entirely in this one. 13-0 win for San Fran. They're 7-4, and NFC West looking a little more interesting now.
Yeah, they are in the driver's seat for sure, in my opinion, in the NFC West. They're playing great football. To me, they're quickly becoming the second best team in the NFC. They got a little stretch here coming on up here, and I think they can certainly prove that they are the second best team. I think the Eagles, I would take the Eagles in a matchup against San Francisco right now, purely because that game will be in Philly if they play it at that level in the playoffs. So I think that really favors Philadelphia for the cross-country trip for the Niners. But listen, they the Saints team isn't terrible. They're not the dregs of the league. And they were able to just completely control that game. I know it doesn't look like a blowout. I mean, 13-0, but they were in control from the first snap to the last snap, and they didn't lose control. Jimmy G, it is weird. Like, they have the 4-touchdown Monday night game, and then he comes back here, and he's very quiet. But again, that just, to your point, shows they can win in a ton of different ways. Saints, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. If you're the Saints, they're just they're in a weird spot, and I think the Saints, a lot like, maybe the Jets and some other teams, where the Saints are just got to find a way to make themselves really attractive to the free agent quarterback / trade quarterback market. Olave's talent, Kamara's a talent, Michael Thomas back next year. Try to find yourself a way to be a destination. But I don't think Allen, the head coach, instills any confidence in, if I was a quarterback looking to make a move. He doesn't right now instill a ton of confidence that I'd want to go play for that guy.
Yeah, they've looked pretty flat all year long. And even defensively, as talented as they are, it's not like they've been really dominant on defense throughout the year, which is, where he's supposed to thrive. So yeah, no, I agree with you there. Final game, Eagles at home over the Packers. 40-33 win. Very high scoring game in this one. Aaron Rodgers ends up going to the bench. We heard he had that thumb injury. Then we were hearing, this weekend that it was actually like a broken thumb. Is way more serious than we thought. But he goes and plays, and then he ends up hurting his oblique, ribs area. He said he thought he punctured his lung. Anyway, we're not entirely sure what it is or what the situation is moving forward. But Jordan Love comes in. He looked pretty decent. I mean, as decent as you can look against the Eagles defense, that's been one of the better units in football this year. But at the end of the day, it was too much from Philadelphia. I mean, they ran the football and then ran the football and then ran the football down their throats just when they knew it was coming.
Yeah.
They couldn't stop it. Over 300 yards on the ground for Philadelphia. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts is in some unique company. He is the only player in NFL history to have 125 rushing yards, 125 passing yards in a half of football. That's the only player to ever do it. And then he joined, I got to find it. It was like a list of maybe 5 quarterbacks ever to have 150 yards passing and 150 yards rushing in the same game. He joins just Michael Vick, Colin Kaepernick, and Lamar Jackson to have those. So that's kind of surprising. He did 125 and 125 and a half. And, so he's the only one to do that. And then the only one to do the 150 and 150. So Jalen Hurts, a superstar. I mean, to me, he's got to me, he's still the front runner for the MVP this year. I know a lot of people want Tua in there, but the Eagles are 10-1, almost certainly in large part, if not exclusively, by the improvements of Jalen Hurts in this team. I mean, the defense has been
Yeah,
great. Don't get me wrong. I want to
defense
take
has been
away
really
from some
great.
of the other players here, but Jalen's been the driver of that record and that run so far. He's
Yeah,
playing out of his
listen,
mind, and he's gotten them there.
Jalen Hurts right now is a top 10 quarterback in the league, and I don't think there's any question about it.
Mhm.
I do think Jalen Hurts is still young and can improve. Like, there are moments when he needs to make the easier stuff look a little easier. Like, where's Jalen Hurts, like, really kind of methodically being able to move a team down the field? But right now, he doesn't need to do that because he's so explosive running. You just get giant chunks. You don't need to move methodically. And his deep ball passes to his really great wide receiving core are beautiful. I mean, that shoulder throw to what's his name?
Yeah, Devontae Smith, I think.
Yeah, but then the other one, not what's the other wide receiver's
Was
name?
it AJ Brown?
It wasn't AJ Brown. It was God, look it up. But it was the touchdown.
Oh, Quez Watkins. Yes.
Watkins. I mean,
I know
that
which one
run
you're
was
talking about. Yeah,
incredible in the corner, right at the pylon, 30 yards from the end zone. So Jalen Hurts is terrific, and he is absolutely also, though, a guy that's all in. I mean, you don't worry about him the way you worry about Kyler Murray,
right.
All in. And so the Eagles, I love the Eagles. I think they're so much fun to watch. I think they play such a great brand of football, and they are what I want my Chicago Bears to become. So, like, I look at them and I see, like, oh, okay,
the blueprint.
That's the blueprint. We need to become that. And so it's really, really been entertaining to watch. And for the Packers, if I were the Packers right now, they are in a very similar situation, I think, to the Broncos and to the Cardinals. There's something not working between the coach and the quarterback. I think it's more than Aaron's injuries. This team has zero identity. This team has zero toughness. This team has zero just like energy. Every time you see the Packers come out, it just looks like everyone's like, oh, like this is just, it doesn't seem like anyone wants to be there. I don't know if it's LaFleur or it's Rodgers, but I feel like you cannot go into next year if you're a Packers fan and feel good that it's LaFleur's your coach and Rodgers is your quarterback. I don't know how. And because defensively, they've spent so much money, so much draft picks on the defense, and the defense is bad. LaFleur's an offensive guy, but his offense is bad. So I just don't know if you're the Packers. I know you're going to say Mark's a hater. He's a Bears fan. I would not feel comfortable as a Packers fan today if you told me that next year you're starting the season with LaFleur as your coach and Rodgers as your quarterback. I'd be comfortable with one of them and the other one gone. I would always lean towards the quarterback, but I think maybe what you do if you're the Packers right now, you say, Aaron, get the thumb healed, get the oblique healed, take 2 weeks off. We're going to start Jordan Love next week against the Bears, and we're going to give him a chance against that really bad defense to see what he can do. And, you know, we know Aaron Rodgers would light it up against the Bears. This is a chance for the Packers to see if Jordan Love's got anything. If you're not going to do it against the Bears, then and that horrible defense, then you have to move on from Jordan Love. So I think it's smart. It would be really smart for them. They're not making the playoffs. Season's done. Rodgers should not be playing this injured. And then if you're the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, you got to figure out if you're playing next year, do you want to play for LaFleur next year, or do you want us to move you because the contract becomes movable? It's a lot of money, but you could start to try to figure that out. It's a weird season in Green Bay, and in my opinion, I would be not excited about starting the season next year as a Packers fan with LaFleur and Rodgers and trying this again, because it did not work this year unless you go out and get a bunch of great free agent wide receivers and continue to improve the offensive line. What makes you think it's going to work next year?
Yeah, I have a feeling they're going to dig their heels in, but I agree it's probably not the decision that they need to go with. But they've got quite a few decisions to make coming up here. But 4-8, things are not looking good in Green Bay right now. All right, any thoughts on this riveting Monday night matchup we have between the Steelers and the Colts?
Only thought is I haven't yet watched Jeff Saturday coach a game. You know what I mean? Like, it's only been a couple games. I haven't had that on a main TV. And I haven't watched Kenny Pickett like in full. I've watched a quarter of Kenny Pickett, like flipping back and forth. I've watched highlights of Kenny Pickett. So that's what the nation needs to watch for tonight. Make an opinion on Kenny Pickett and we can make an opinion on Jeff Saturday, and we'll discuss it. Maybe next week a little bit, or we'll have to have some thoughts on it. Super Bowl plane really quickly before we go. I can unveil it. First class this week. I bumped the Bills back up. Chiefs, Eagles, Bills. I feel the vibes are good in Buffalo. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt heading into this really important 3-game stretch in their division. Business class, Dolphins, Bengals, Niners, Cowboys. All of those teams right now, if you told me if they were in their championship game, I'd be like, not really surprised. Things had to break their way maybe for them to get to their championship game, but I wouldn't be shocked if any of those teams were in their championship game. And then economy class, again, as you know, these are teams that are playoff-worthy teams, but I don't see them making a championship game or a Super Bowl. Vikings, Titans, Ravens. And I'll give a shout-out to the Commanders this week.
Oh, Washington getting some love.
I'll give them a shout-out.
Very nice. All right. Looking forward to it. All right. Week 13 is on the docket next. But until next time, this is the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan signing off.